The American Cancer Society released a state-by-state report card today, ranking how well a particular state's controlled substance policies promotes effective pain management, while simultaneously lowering the risk of prescription drug abuse. California, along with 15 other states, got a B+. Here to help put this issue into context is Dr. Timothy Furnish with the Center for Pain Management at UC San Diego, and welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Furnish, the American Cancer Society said about 2/3 of cancer patients suffer from untreated pain. What's the scope of serious illness, people with serious illness dealing with inadequate pain management?
You know, I think in the world, there is a significant issue with cancer pain patients and other pain patients getting access to prescription medications, especially opioids. In the United States, it would be a little bit difficult to say that we have an under-prescribing of controlled substances, especially opioids, especially considering that we, as a nation, consume the vast majority of prescription opioids in the world. However, I would also say that pain remains an undertreated condition, and that doesn't necessarily always mean that we're not giving enough opioids.
So there might be other ways to treat it.
Exactly.
I see. What are some of the major roadblocks in getting pain treatments for patients?
I think that there potentially are some access issues, especially with pain specialists. In the past, 15 or 20 years, primary care doctors have followed the early pain specialists in prescribing more and more opioids, and I think may not send patients for specialist care quite early enough.
The report is titled Achieving Balance in State Pain Policy. What makes for a balanced or good pain policy, in your opinion?
Well, I think that the report actually does a fairly good job of outlining that they want to make sure that pain is considered an important therapy in a regulatory standpoint by medical boards and the legislature, that we are not equating addiction with dependence or tolerance to pain medications. This is a natural process that occurs, that people will become tolerant to opioids over time, but that's not the same thing as addiction. They want to make sure that patients have access to opioids when it's really necessary, and that there is adequate education for physicians on how to manage these medications and how to prescribe.
I know California has a pain prescription database. Can you explain how it works and if you think it's effective?
I think it's a key tool in managing patients' pain and dealing with both pain management but also the addictions issue with opioids. So the database looks at or collects information about all the controlled substance prescriptions, which includes things like opioids, but some other medications like benzodiazepines, which are things like Valium. And it stores that in a database that's only accessible by physicians who've gone through a special enrollment process with the Department of Justice, so that we can then look to see where people have gotten prescriptions and who has been writing them and what doses they've been on.
Earlier in the newscast, we heard prescription drug overdose continues to be one of the leading causes of unnatural deaths in San Diego County. What else do you think needs to be done to prevent or reverse prescription drug abuse?
You know, it's interesting. There's been some very preliminary evidence that as we've really been focusing on this, some of the doses have started to come down. In Florida, for instance, recently there's been some legislative action that has reduced some of the prescribing, and they're beginning to see a turn in the number of deaths, and that they may be coming down. I think that with cancer pain patients, we're dealing with a completely separate issue. The biggest problem, in my mind, is the non-cancer chronic pain patients. And there are a number of them that are very appropriate to be on opioids, and maybe for long periods of time. But when the doses get very high and the prescribing becomes uncontrolled or not done in a very careful manner, sometimes it can get out of hand. And those patients clearly are at higher risk of auto accidents, falls, injuries, but also potentially death.
All right, well, we have more on this report on our website, kpbs.org. Dr. Timothy Furnish, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.